The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, today's question comes from Steve2323ZX, who asks, does an organization like Section 31 have a place in Gene Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek?
If you take the straightforward definition, no.
And why is that?
Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future was Utopia, which means no mastermind society that verges on immoral, pulling strings and making sure the utopia happens. Because that wouldn't really be a utopia, as we've seen Kirk ruin several of those on various random planets.
Yeah, there's that. And I'd say that DS9 by its very definition is not a utopian vision.
No, it's not. Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Gene Roddenberry's vision is a great one, and it was especially great in the original series when we were telling mostly morality plays. And you can deal with the human condition a little bit with that, but not to its fullest extent. And it's really hard to show realistic humans operating in a society. I mean, because in DS9 we're actually showing how the Federation works. And sure, it's on the edge of space, but these are real people, and we have to see them interact, and it's not always perfect.
Yeah, what's complicated about DS9 is that if you're gonna tell stories where you're gonna do very realistic type politics, and the way DS9 handles things with the Bajorans and the Cardassians, it's very difficult to pretend like everything with Starfleet is just okay.
Right.
Why is it that the Bajorans and the Cardassians can't figure this out, but we figured it out so long ago? That seems a little unfair. I mean, I know that these are fictional characters, but it seems a little unfair to those species. We're being a little bit human-centric, right?
Yeah.
Where we're like, humanity, and we get this sometimes in Star Trek, right? We're like, we'll get that. This happens a lot in TOS and TNG. We'll get that alien race that of energy beings or something, where they'll pop in and they'll be like, of all the species we've ever seen, the humans are so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have compassion. They have abilities to think outside the box and problem solve like we've never seen before, and yada yada yada. And I just have a hard time imagining that with all these different bipedal species all over the universe, with all these humanoids, that we would be that different from anyone else.
Yes, exactly. Well, exactly. And Q even comes to our species and goes, "Okay, well, you guys need to prove yourselves." Does he do that to everybody?
Yeah, you got to wonder, like, why is humanity so?
Yeah, and the star
so
of the show is the person he finds the most unique and interesting of everyone.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely knocking it for that.
No,
I'm just saying that
but
it was doing something different from what DS9 is doing, and DS9 is trying to look at things a little bit more realistically. I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you look at real life, real life is muddy.
Yeah.
And you can't show that if all your characters it's supposed to be utopian. And even in the original series, you get some of that, where you're like, hey, wait a minute, if this is a utopia, how does this person exist? And how do they deal with people like this?
Yeah, you remember Decker and Doomsday Machine? You got to wonder how that guy could exist in a world where bad things don't seem to happen on Earth.
Yeah,
and things like that. How is it that we ever have a murderer? How,
Exactly.
We talk so much in TOS and even in TNG about how extremely unlikely and impossible to imagine a mutiny on a starship is. It never happens. This kind of thing never happens. Humans have gotten past their petty differences. You get to DS9, you get to the first episode of DS9, Sisko's not gotten past his petty differences.
Yeah.
He can't even forgive Picard for doing something when Picard was being controlled by the Borg.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make him unsympathetic and unlikable. It makes him human.
Sure.
It's hard to look at the face of the killer who killed your wife, whether he meant to or not.
Yeah.
Okay, if we're going to be that realistic with Sisko, we eventually have to look at the institution that spawned him.
Yeah. And I think this DS9 is actually to be commended for doing that. And I'm not saying that I wanted all the other series to be just like DS9. I
No,
think
me neither.
one DS9 is enough, certainly, for Star Trek.
And so the question is, does it fit within the context of the rest of the continuity, or is it even really all that important? Because I've heard the argument that DS9 just isn't really Star Trek to some people, for the same reasons that you and I just mentioned. And yet, DS9 is very Star Trek to me.
Me too, actually. I'd say it is a darker show. It explores some of the darker aspects of humanity. But it's still Star Trek. It still has those ideals. It still is about exploration, going forward, trying to improve yourself. It shows that, okay, Earth is supposedly still a utopia, but it still has these issues, and humanity still has space to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
this is the inner workings of it. This is where we are. This is where we need to go.
And it's still doing what Star Trek always did, which is trying to talk about real questions of life, and that's what science fiction does.
Yeah, exactly.
It's asking questions. It's asking real questions about real things, and Star Trek always did that. But DS9 did it more within its character interactions than it did just here's a situation and we're gonna weigh both sides of this.
You take one side, you take another one. Who wins out?
DS9 was just a little more complicated than that. It did it a lot because it was in one place.
Right.
And so, and I mean, you'll hear a lot of people talk about this with DS9 where, by necessity, these people can't all get along. They don't fly around the universe together in a starship. Like they come and go. It's like they're in a big town as opposed to being on a ship. Now I know that the Enterprise is really is pretty big. I mean, Enterprise D and TNG still not as big as a space station.
Sure.
And so that's a lot more like living in a town.
And I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, but shows like TNG and original series and Voyager even, they were able to rely on the crutch of, hey, here's a new planet we haven't seen before.
That's right.
What are we going to figure out about these guys?
Yeah, and the conflict came from coming up against some force, or
whether
having to do
it's a
with some
spatial
problem.
anomaly, two species who don't get along, or
Disease.
whatever it is for the week. The characters are dealing with external conflicts, external situations. On DS9, they're not going anywhere.
So those conflicts become internal conflicts.
Right, so you have to develop the characters further. They have to be able to have interactions where they don't get along, because otherwise you're just kind of sitting there going, okay, here's 45 minutes out of our day where, nothing's happening. We have ships coming in.
Absolutely. So my argument for Section 31, and it's almost amazing that Section 31 didn't happen earlier than it did, because we were already exploring the idea that Earth might not be quite the utopia we thought it was as early as 4, and we had that two-parter where we go to Earth and we find out that there's founders that are mimicking human beings, and then we start dealing with the question of should we put guards on every street corner, and creating a police state in the utopia of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And that was kind of scary. So we were already starting to deal with these kinds of ideas of how does a utopia really work. And so the thing that made it work, and the reason I'm okay with Section 31 is because DS9 says, look, it's just not that quite simple. It's not quite that simple.
Yeah.
Yes, humanity has progressed quite a bit, but we're also maybe just a little bit in denial. And is that kind of pessimistic? Maybe a little bit.
Maybe. I think it's just exploring whether or not a real utopia makes any sense. And how changed do humans have to be in order to make this work?
In the other shows, we're on a ship. We're always away from Earth. We don't go to Earth all that often. We hardly ever do in TOS, except for like a time travel episode. And then TNG, it's on the very rare occasion. And so while you're flying around on a starship, you're distanced from Earth.
Right.
It's very easy to get the sense of what we think Earth is actually like versus what it really turns out to be. And that's why I thought DS9 was pretty genius to have Section 31 part of the original charter. Where Section 31's been around this whole time, they've been working behind the scenes, and so we didn't have to know they were around because nobody does.
Right.
That's maybe the easy way out, but I like it. I like the idea of these kind of covert operations.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little too easy that DS9, that Cisco and crew find out about Section 31 when nobody's known about them for 200 years.
Yeah, unless you count Reed.
But yeah,
Well,
Which-
that would be 200 years ago.
Which begs the question as to why Section 31 seems to only recruit British people. I was kind of wondering that. It's like, if Section 31 is going to recruit someone Enterprise, it must be British, because so is Bashir.
Well, they're just more sophisticated, so...
Right. Well, maybe it's also kind of that, like, James Bond sort of thing.
There you go.
Like, British people are just better for the...
For the undercover spy missions?
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly. Well, and it's also kind of funny because, we already knew that Bashir liked to do the spy stuff on the holodeck, so he got picked for Section 31. That was always kind of fun to me.
Yeah.
I always thought Sloane was really interesting and really
Yeah,
fun, very
I always liked
complex
him.
kind of character. He was a lot cooler in his first appearance than he ever was afterwards. He only got a couple appearances after that, and I was glad that they didn't do a whole lot of stuff with Section 31.
You wouldn't want them to. I mean...
It would get too dark too fast.
It would,
I think.
And it would... I like the idea of that organization being a mystery, and so you
Yeah.
realize it exists just kind of like Garrick, where you never really know too much about his past, and he's always kind of got this mysterious side, even as we know more about him as a character.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of Section 31 existing and we know about it, and so it's a lot scarier and a lot more menacing if we don't know very much more than the fact that it exists. So I always like that.
Well, and the implications, of course, are frightening, and they're supposed to be. And,
Yeah.
and the idea, again, the idea that we thought, and everybody in Starfleet thought they knew what exactly Starfleet, and what exactly the Federation and Starfleet were. It's really interesting because at the same time, it would be easy to look back on this and go, well, they made up Section 31 after the fact. It doesn't really make any sense. But none of our characters know what it is.
No.
And they're working behind the scenes, and who knows what they knew before any of the rest of us did. I always got the sense that, I look back and I'd be like, what about all of the different things that we find out with our characters within Star Trek as it goes along? What if Section 31 knew the whole time that the Romulans were cousins of Vulcans? They probably did,
Yeah.
and things like that. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
How much do they know about the Tal Shiar? How much do they know about the Obsidian
And you really
Order?
don't know exactly how influential and how much of an impact that they do have on various events.
You don't know if they're always doing some kind of a mission, or if they sit on the sidelines for years on end until something happens, where they've got their 2 or 3 like big wigs in Section 31 that just watch and wait for things to happen, and then all the top secret stuff comes their way from the very top. But I always got the sense that they had access to everything, but nobody talked to them directly.
Yeah.
Which is like they have clearance for everything. They get to look at everything. No one even knows who they are.
Sure.
In
Well, and
Starfleet.
it could be that there are just a couple of them, like you said, a couple bigwigs.
Yeah, like
and then
you got Sloan and some other
then
guy.
They're just waiting around, and then some big event happens where there's a threat to the Federation, and they're like, okay, recruit time.
Yeah.
And so that's why they put out their feelers for Bashir, and then maybe they were testing some other people trying to get them in.
Well, exactly. The best way to do covert operations like that is to get somebody who's already close, to the situation. Depending on what it is, you've got somebody who's wearing a Starfleet uniform. He's supposed to be there anyway.
Yeah.
It's
So rather
really
than
easy
try to get somebody into a certain spot.
so
where
they're
they'd be
mimicking
close.
someone.
Yeah. You pull someone who's already close to it. I don't know. That'd be fun, but it's all hypothetical.
That was the thing that was so much fun about Section 31 is that I always wanted to see more of them, and was really glad that I didn't. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
You're always anticipating, and it leaves a lot to the imagination. And that's the other thing that Star Trek is the best at. At its best, Star Trek makes you draw your own conclusions at its very best, and that's why it never comes right down and says this Utopia thing isn't working, but we've got these hints. Well, we've got the certainty with Section 31 that it's just not quite that simple. Is the world of Star Trek better than ours in the sense of they've progressed to where they don't need money? There's certainly not very many times people get hurt and murdered.
Or sick or
injured.
injured.
Because our technology is so much better, and people seem to have put a lot of their differences behind them. They have better attitudes about things because they're not working toward the greater good as opposed to their own. So all of that, is that better than what we have now? Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Is it made less better because of Section 31? No. Not really. Would I take Section 31 over what we have now to get what we have in Star Trek? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe. Depends on if that's the world you want to live in, and that's a totally different conversation, right? And yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, is it worth it depending on...
Yeah.
That's true, because we don't know the practices.
Yeah. Exactly.
Are they, are they torturing people a lot, or have they
and the question
are they
is,
tapping phone lines?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Is it Section 31 who keeps the Utopia really in check, or is it simply that the Utopia, what parts of it exist, is there simply because the technology is better? So if people don't get sick or hurt because the technology's there, people don't need money because we have replicators, and you get all the stuff you need, so nobody's really materialistic.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't these qualities just come of their own because of the technology?
And that brings up another interesting thing about Section 31. And like we said, it's you kind of draw your own conclusions because it's difficult to tell exactly whether or not it's even necessary. Where it's like, is it outdated? They thought they needed it in the original Federation Charter, and then it just kept existing because there was no way to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just there. Nobody knows what they are. Yeah. It's this really subtle little thing. I mean, if you don't know, Section 31 is called that because the thing that creates them is Article Section 31 in the Federation Charter. So it's the name of the organization. Yeah, but Section 31 is the name of the organization, but it's not because there's a bunch of organizations called Section something.
Yeah.
It's because that's the name of the clause. And what if it's one of those things that's just outdated? We don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
It kind of like people have argued about the electoral college, that maybe we don't need that anymore. You know what I mean? Like and obviously I'm not getting political. I'm not saying that what I think one way or another on that, but I'm just saying that
Section 31, most people don't know it exists.
True, there's that. But I'm just saying that
vote an amendment to the Federation Charter that says
when nobody knows what it is, that it's even there.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what's so extremely interesting about it. But it's one of the things where maybe the people who work for Section 30, who are part of Section 31, have just gotten so engrossed in this idea of getting to do these covert things that are really subversive. Nobody knows we're doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. But it's okay because it's always existed and it will go on existing.
Maybe they don't even say to themselves, maybe we shouldn't do this, because for every time they do something, the weight of the world is resting on their shoulders. They're saving the universe. They're saving the Federation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, could you say no to a job like that?
Exactly.
So, and especially since they get to decide...
it's quite the recruitment pitch, right?
Yeah. They get to decide exactly how the world is saved and how the world is supposed to be and which parts to preserve. Yeah. So
I don't know. Does it fit with Roddenberry's vision? No. Could we have had 702 episodes of Star Trek that stuck really, really close to Roddenberry's vision and keep it interesting? I don't know. I mean,
possibly, but I like the variety. I really do.
Exactly. That's my thing. And I'm not knocking what Roddenberry did and what Roddenberry set up, and I'm not saying that's outdated. It's absolutely not.
No, absolutely
I would not say that. I am saying that DS9 was a show about the stuff that was happening in the corner of the universe.
Yeah. Well, I think it was.
And I mean, it became this big giant war thing at the end. Yes. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? It was about people's interactions and the politics of these two planets.
Yeah, and it was an exploration of Roddenberry's vision, where the rest of it fit pretty well to Roddenberry's vision.
That's a really good point.
But DS9 explored it and said, okay, what is Roddenberry saying, and how is that applicable to us today, and how do we get there, and can we get there?
Yeah. Yeah, and let's question it a little bit.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's question it. Let's decide if this is really working.
Yeah. And you can't knock anything for questioning a philosophy.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's great that Star Trek can question its own philosophy. Ultimately, it comes out on top and it believes in its own philosophy. I don't think DS9 gets away from it so far that it doesn't believe in it.
No, but
I think in fact it strengthens it by asking by showing how difficult it is to preserve it. That's interesting.
And saying that once you have this utopia, you must keep it at all costs, or
or it's very difficult to
very
keep it.
difficult to keep it.
Yeah, because you do kind of get the sense a little bit with TOS that like we managed to get there. And once we're there, we're there.
Yeah.
They're like that's not how it would work. Not when you're meeting new like species every day.
But you
and
can
of course,
fall
like,
off on one side or the other and be, too controlling and say this is utopian. We must preserve this particular kind, and no one has free will.
Right.
Or you let everyone
Yeah.
go amok, and then you have just chaos. So, where's the balance?
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think about Section 31? Leave your comments in the section labeled comments.
Yes, not 31.
Not 31.
We don't
right,
have one of those.
Right, we don't. Luckily, we don't. Geekvolution has no Section 31 that you know of. And let us know if you have anything you'd like us to talk about later on in a future video. And thanks again for watching Ask the Treksperts. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Sarah.
And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
The best